the things Troy was saying, even if you don't know ASL, which third year didn't know any ASL, no sign language, but he could definitely understand what Troy was saying. It was so rude, so naughty. He's even getting props involved and everything. And I found it so hard to keep a straight face and be mortified. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you.
Good. Are you having a wonderful day today?
I am, yeah. Are you in New York?
Currently, right now, out in the suburbs with my folks for
Nice.
days. How about yourself?
I'm in London. Yeah, I'm in London at the moment, and Troy and Sean have flown over to do some press, so it's like best of both worlds. I'm in my hometown, but I'm also with the CODA family working, so it's nice. And I've been with my family in London, so it's raining, of course.
Are you drinking tea today?
I am. I feel very posh, actually. I'm in a hotel room because we're doing press, and they've given me a fancy teacup.
I am actually hard of hearing myself. So this film, right from the moment I heard about it, I was excited to see CODA because it's so rare. I feel we're so vastly unrepresented anyway. And I was just really thrilled that this was going to be a perspective I had never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw the film and I absolutely adored everything about it. Did being around total ASL experts on in front of the camera and behind the camera kind of give you that freedom to sort of just go with it and be able to, put your own stamp on it, I should say.
100%. I think that's where Sean was so amazing. She was representing a community and that she wasn't a part of, so she surrounded herself with people that did know. And on CODA, we had the most amazing people. I had an amazing coach called Anselma D'Souza who taught me ASL for 9 months, and then I flew to Massachusetts and I worked closely with Anne Tomasetti and Alexandria Wales, who are our ASL directors on set. And Anne Tomasetti was basically like my rock throughout this whole movie. She was so amazing and she pushed me, and we just worked together every hour in the day. And she'd even come over to my place on the weekends and late at night, and we'd kind of be going over the lines, and she was so great. But yeah, I think it's so important to have people, that do know and that can watch the scenes. For instance, when we were doing those improvising scenes, it just meant that I could have a go and I could improvise back. And if it wasn't right, someone would tell me. Anne would come and tell me, and she'd say, "What are you trying to say?" And then we'd kind of work together. But it just meant I could have a go, and I didn't have to be scared if I was right or wrong. Or and it also meant that Marley, Troy, and Daniel didn't have to also have their eyes on me. They could focus on their characters and their signs, because Anne was kind of focusing on mine. But I was grateful that my teacher, I going into this movie, I didn't just want to learn my lines in sign language. I wanted to actually learn the language so I could communicate with Marley, Troy, and Daniel, without an interpreter, and, kind of create that family bond. So we'd hang out on the weekends, and then my signs would grow even more. But it just meant that I could then improvise in those scenes when Troy was improvising. And it was so much fun. I loved portraying my feelings through a different medium.
I can imagine. And I would say that it really, you can tell that just have it being around that sense of vibrancy and support, or you guys did feel like a actual family that we were being invited into. And I could say for me personally, having grown up with hearing loss, people never think of it, but you do have all of this. It can be very humorous sometimes when you can understand something or you can't understand something. And I have to imagine with the ASL as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, especially to be able to have that ability to improv and express yourself through that medium and show the beauty of that language.
I mean, it's such a beautiful language. It's so beautiful and physical and emotional. I found, obviously, because I haven't ever signed before, and especially with CODA, because a lot of it was, you know, signed and improvised. I just found that it allows you to get out of your head. And I guess it made me feel more vulnerable. You know, there were no words to hide behind. And yeah, you just embody what you're saying. And suddenly, you know, sometimes I guess my approach when I'm reading my lines is, okay, how do I what word shall I accentuate? Like, how will I make this land? And you kind of think about all of that. But with sign language, you know, you can't just say, oh, it's big. You have to show with your facial expressions, your body language. And then suddenly you're not thinking about it because you're being it in a way. And I just loved that. I loved that so much. It was a challenge. I won't lie. It was a very big challenge, because I think, you know, sometimes your approach, or my approach, has been like, you know, less is more. Sometimes your face is, you know, your eye is the size of a double-decker bus when you're on the TV screen if you go to the cinema. And so a lot of your feelings you can portray by feeling them inside, and it comes out. You don't have to do that much. But with sign language, it was completely different. So I loved that challenge.
Was there a sign that you are the most proud of?
A sign I'm the most proud of? Yeah. So the scene when Ruby is asked how she feels when she sings, I was asking Sean kind of a couple days running up to that scene. I was saying that, you know, there's no sign for this. It's not in the script. It's not described. No, every time I mention this sign, everyone kind of goes quiet. And I was like, what is this sign? And Sean was like, actually, we all want you to go away and come up with this sign, and, you know, come up with how Ruby feels when she sings, because you know her better than anyone else. And so I kind of loved that. I loved that opportunity. So I kind of went away, and I went home and stayed up really late, kind of trying to figure out, you know, how Ruby feels when she sings and how I can make that sign beautiful and meaningful. And I kind of, from the coders, I spoke to a lot of coders in my prep time, and from the coders that I spoke to, they all say that, you know, they're part of the hearing world and the deaf world, but they don't really feel like they belong to either. And so I was trying to think, and I kind of thought, you know, Ruby loves singing so much, and she's discovered this love for singing. And I think that when she sings, she's part of a kind of world that she feels completely part of. And so I was trying to get that across in my sign, and I went into my trailer in the morning of right before we were filming that scene, and Anne came to my trailer and she was like, show me. And I was really excited, and I signed what I thought Ruby would, you know, say when she says how she feels when she sings. And Anne just laughed in my face, and I was kind of thinking, oh, I wanted it to be moving, not funny. And she said, you just told me you had indigestion. And so then I had to go away again, and we worked on it, and I kind of voiced what I wanted to say, and then we kind of bounced back and forth, and then we came up with this sign. And so it was a slight disaster, but then that was the sign that I was most proud of, for sure.
You were fortunate, I should say, to have co-stars that are, some of them are amazing comic talents.
Yeah, Troy is a master improviser. Any scene that Troy was in, it was all improv, and especially the naughty, dirty scenes where he had to use like naughty words in sign language, he would definitely improvise. I remember the scene with you know, when the parents are giving the kind of sex talk to Ruby and Miles, and she's mortified.
One of my favorite scenes, by the way.
It was so funny. Honestly, I had to just like bite my cheek and my tongue, because I just, honestly, I never corpsed, but that scene I found really hard. But Sean, we shot Troy and Marley's coverage first, and then Sean turned around and she said, look, Ferdy, I mean, like, I know that you've watched the scene over and over again. We've done loads of takes, but just remember, this is the first time you're hearing this. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then the first take, obviously the camera wasn't on Troy, so the first take we did on us, the things Troy was saying, even if you don't know ASL, which Ferdia didn't know any ASL, no sign language, but he could definitely understand what Troy was saying. It was so rude, so naughty. He was even getting props involved and everything, and I found it so hard to keep a straight face and be mortified.
I'm sure you've probably been asked about this all the time, but that scene at the end of the film, at the audition,
yes,
I feel the entire film we have been watching Ruby to try to figure out who she is and assert what she wants and try to find that happy medium between these two worlds that she occupies. And it's in that moment, looking up at her parents and where she starts performing for them and forgetting about the college admission process and the audition, is when you can see her really come into her own, and really that completes her blossoming, I would say.
Yeah.
What was shooting that scene like? Or
That
how did it
scene,
come together?
yeah, it was a special scene to film. We were lucky because all of the scenes in the movie, that kind of all the music scenes were shot in order. So as Ruby's voice was kind of growing, so was mine. And this scene was towards the end of the shoot. It was in the last week of filming. And that scene was so hard. It was so hard. It was kind of like multitasking under pressure. It was kind of like rubbing your tummy and tapping your head. I kind of, going into the scene, I had to make sure that, you know, all my signs were accurate. I had to, all the singing was recorded live on set. So I also had to make sure that my singing was in tune because I have to get into Berklee College of Music. And also I had to make sure my acting was tonally where it needed to be because it's the end of the movie. And as you just said, you know, Ruby is, that's the moment that Ruby has kind of figured out who she is and who she's going to be, you know, when she leaves her family and figures out who she is outside of her childhood identity. So it was tough, but because it was at the end of shooting, also my signs did change the day before, so that was kind of nerve-wracking, but they changed for the best. The signs that we ended up with are so beautiful and perfect for the film and perfect for Ruby. But it was special that it was at the end of shooting because, you know, this movie had been such a big part of my life for so long. I'd trained for so long, and I guess I'd been living and breathing ASL and sign language and singing and fishing. And I guess I just looked up during the song when Ruby, you know, decides to sign, and I got really emotional because just the thought of leaving this project and leaving Marley, Troy and Daniel and Sean, and it was so emotional. I mean, as you said, you know, the family that you see on screen, I mean, we kind of were that family. We all were in Gloucester and we only knew each other. And we just hung out on like all the weekends. Sometimes I would have to miss out on bowling and things because I had ASL training. But when I could go, we would watch the football and we would just be a family. And Marley would cook and Troy and Daniel would bicker because they don't support the same football team. And we kind of just were that family. And I was just getting really emotional about leaving, and I was sad. And so that scene was special and fun to film because it was that kind of last push. And yeah, I guess that's why I loved recording the songs live on set, because I think you can't fake that the kind of, I guess, the emotion in your voice and the emotion in the signs, it was just all there that day. And I loved that scene. It was nerve-wracking singing Both Sides Now, though. I will say it's such an iconic song and Joni Mitchell is so iconic, so I was nervous.